Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Wednesday, and I'm back, baby. Let's just say the sickness that swept the Patriot office finally got to me, and I had to take a few days off, but the show went on. Shout out to Jason. I know I gave him really short notice yesterday. I knew I was going to be out Monday. I gave him plenty of warning, and on Monday afternoon, I had texted him, listen, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there on Tuesday. I got you, brother. I'm feeling better. And Tuesday morning rolled around. I got up, and as you guys know, I'm an early guy, and let's just say I'm like, you know what? Gosh, I'm not feeling so. I don't have to be to work this early. I just, I'm going to just lay back down and I'll get up. And an hour later, I get up and I decide, you know what? Give me another half hour and I'll be okay. And a half hour goes by. I actually get my clothes on. I am dressed to go to work. And I make it to the top of our staircase to go downstairs, and was like, yeah, nope, not happening. And it was literally, not even a little, like an hour before Jason and I were supposed to go on the air. I'm sending a text to Jason, hey, I'm not making it, but hey, he did what he could do, and some days are better than others, right, Jason? But it's tough when you've got to do 3 hours of radio, and then all of a sudden your partner, an hour before you go on the air, is letting you know, oh, by the way, I'm not going to be at work. So my apologies. I had all intentions of coming to work yesterday. I just wasn't ready, buddy.
Yeah, it worked out just fine. And the longer you do this, the more you try to have things in place just in case for those situations. So I'm getting better and better at the prepping for anything when it comes to the 3 hours of radio every day. So main thing I try to do is stay healthy. I try to stay healthy so I don't have to miss any days myself.
Yeah, that's, you know what, I'm working on it. I'm working on that. Well, ever since I got COVID the first time, just seems like I struggle with anything. It just takes longer than it used to. Maybe it's just because, I don't know, maybe, I hate to say it, maybe I'm just getting older. But trying to take better care of myself, that's on the agenda for this coming year, 2024. Hopefully all of you that follow us out on YouTube and Rumble, by the end of 2024, hopefully you'll see a lot less of me. Not that I'm not going to be here, just there'll be less of me to see. That's going to be the goal. But enough about that. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. And I know that there's a lot of stuff to catch up and talk about, and we'll try to, catch up on all the information that's happened over the last 48 to 72 hours. There was a lot of it. The Dow down right now, but, up near those record highs as the Magnificent Seven rolls around. But like Macy's, the other day, closing 150 stores. Outback Steakhouse parent company, and they own Outback. They own a couple of other fish and restaurant chains. They're closing 45 stores. TJ Maxx in home goods. They had good numbers today, but a lot of companies said, hey, the numbers aren't going to be so good in 2024. Their stock's down today. Apple deciding that they're going to be trying to make electric cars, Jason. I guess they're going to leave the car making to the car people. But a lot of, this kind of a weird deal here where we've got stocks globally at all-time highs, really led by just those handful of stocks. Layoffs continue to show up. But jobless claims really aren't moving the way most people thought. And again, everybody's wondering, what is the Fed going to do? What we're going to hit? We're going to be in March by the end of this week, and everybody's expecting big announcements from the Fed in the March meeting, where they're going to announce the slowdown of quantitative tightening, and of course, when and if the Fed is going to actually start cutting rates this year, Jason, right? That's kind of what the markets want to believe, that the Fed's going to go into full-blown rate cut mode. The Fed hasn't quite said that yet, but most people expect it, because the banks, and really outside of the mega banks, right, they're all struggling with these high rates.
Yeah, we'll have to watch as the weeks go on. I mean, I think you have to see some really bad market stress before I think it has to happen first now. I think the bad market stuff has to happen before the rates go down. I think they're going to like sitting right where they're at, Joe, and wait and see, because they don't want to take the rates down and have inflation go up. And then look, inflation's being stubborn right now. So it's just like we've been saying since they printed all that money in 2020. They have two bad choices, and they're waiting to see which one to have to play out.
Which bad choice are we going to have to make this time? Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. $800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Wednesday, and we had GDP revisions out today. And again, like a lot of revisions out of this Biden administration, and I don't know, did they make changes? They haven't said this publicly, that, oh, by the way, we've changed all these reports, but so many. I mean, it's ridiculous, the overwhelming amount of estimates that always get reported lower. It seems like this is just a pattern every single row. I mean, even consumer confidence. Now, they say, well, we had to restate consumer confidence. How do you restate consumer confidence? What, did you call them back? Right? And say, hey, well, did you change your mind? I mean, I don't know. But lower GDP, but the cost of the GDP is still a good number, right? I mean, you look at it, it was like 3.2%, and you're like, hey, that's pretty good, With the GDP grew by over $300 billion, but at what cost? At what cost? Is it really GDP growth? If you have to, get a $300 billion worth of GDP growth in a quarter, if you've got to go $850 billion into debt, is that really growth? And how long can you continue to play that game? And I think this is what we talk about when we're looking at these markets. All-time record highs. The Dow's down again today. Not a lot, down less than 100 points. The S&P's down 4. The Nasdaq's down 55. The 10-year note at 4.29. We had two terrible auctions while I was gone on the low end, which we normally don't see. Usually the bad auctions, the 10-year note, the 20-year note, the 30-year note. The 2- and 5-year note, which, by the way, new record sizes, right? So the Treasury, hey, we need more money, struggling to sell. And you start to understand it. You're like, gosh, man, $300 billion in growth, $800 billion in debt, right? So really, when you add the two together, what? You're down $500 billion in a quarter. And doing this quarter after quarter after quarter. And I think this is why we talk about 2024, the year of chaos, because it feels like kind of the end of a bubble cycle again, right? We have all this weird stuff. We got commercial real estate problems, regular, housing real estate. It's Well, the prices are hanging in there, but you're talking about, hey, we're selling homes like heck. I mean, we may get out of the 90s back to the 80s with how slow home sales seem to be. We have banks failing. I mean, it really is a year of chaos and really all over the place. You have this small group of stocks just worth, small fortunes now, $2 trillion, $3 trillion, it just crazy, absurd levels, and everybody's kind of, when is the dam going to break? And this is why we always say you got to be diversified. Yeah, gold and silver is a good part of it. But for those of you that have more than $50,000, whether it's in an IRA or in your bank accounts, whatever it may be, check out why refi. I mean, you get up to 10.25% fixed rates of return. And we talk about fixed rates, but what does fixed mean? It doesn't change. It's not correlated to Wall Street. Hey, if the bubble doesn't pop, you still get 10.25. If the bubble does pop, you get 10.25. If the Fed lowers rates, you get 10.25. If the Fed raises rates, you get 10.25, right? See, you see what I'm getting at. There's no fees. You can turn your income on or off, and you know what? I just think it's a pretty cool thing because it's a great investment you can actually feel good about. Check them out, investyrefy.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com, or just call them at 888-YREFI24. But, Jason, I think the question really being asked today is, to get $300 billion worth of growth, $330 billion, that we went into debt another $854 billion. And on top of that, that doesn't, you got to remember, the bank emergency lending facility still going on, right? It was definitely going on back then. And other things that the Federal Reserve was doing to kind of make things appear a little better than what they really were. And I think everybody's asking the same question. How much longer does that trick work? And it used to be, think about it, now we're approaching, for every $1 of quote-unquote GDP growth, we're now having to go $3 into debt. Matter of fact, I think that's what the number will be this year in 2024. $1 of economic growth, we've got to go $3 into debt, Jason, just to achieve it.
Yeah, the debt is it's the non-problem that's a massive problem. You ask the government, you ask the bankers, you just service the debt, that's just a number, right, Joe? It's just a number. It's just a number until it's an unpayable number, until it's a number that's so, and what is that, Joe? It seems like every 5-10 years, everyone's like, we can't service it, and then they figure out some other way. And this is why I think the inflation is a purposeful event. I think that they're mimicking what happened in the 60s going into the 70s inflation. The repatriated gold was happening. They knew that gold was going to get repatriated in the 60s. Right. They knew it was coming, and then they inflated the whole thing. Right? They inflated 1971, we'll stop the gold, and here came the inflation. We're in the same place. And this time, instead of taking out the gold standard, they look like they want to take the paper out of the system, so that they can control what happens to the money, so that they can control the system even tighter. And I don't know if there's anywhere to go after that, Joe. If we go to a digital-only money and they kick this can down the road, so to speak, we can go into $10 trillion dollar deficits every year and, and $100 trillion debt. I mean, if they can control everything that everyone purchases and the timing of it, I guess they can kick it down the road. But, man, is it going to be hard to be an American trying to live a comfortable life in that situation, Joe. It's already tough enough.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? When you sit there and like I saw as I was laying in my bed doing absolutely nothing, the number of 401k millionaires shot up, right? And they're trying to convince you, see, look, isn't that great news? And here's the reality. Man, it would be if that $1 million bought what it bought just even 10 years ago. Heaven forbid it bought what it bought 20 years ago. Today, think about this. We've got a, quote unquote, record number of 401k millionaires. and yet the vast majority of Americans now can't afford a home. I mean, it's what is it, like 80%? Right, and probably more than that if you throw if mom and dad and grandpa weren't helping out, right? Probably less than that. And then how many now? 60% can't afford a new car, right? Is that really prosperity? How many people think that, man, if I'm 65 and I'm going to live to say 85, and I stop working? How many people out there are like, yeah, gosh, I could make it I could go 20 years on $1 million. Most people would be like, yeah, that's not enough, right? $1 million, that's not enough. And of course, the people that have the $1 million and the lifestyle that they're accustomed to, Jason, right, that it just doesn't work. The math isn't adding up. The unfortunate, we're kind of like the government, aren't we, when we think about it? Over the years, gosh, I for every one more dollar that I'm getting in my 401k returns, in order for me to retire, gosh, I needed $3, but I only got one, right? And, so the fact that we've got more people that are 401k millionaires, the problem is they needed to be multi-millionaires to keep up.
I think if you live in an expensive part of the country, you might only get about 8 years out of that million. If you live in an average part of America, I think you get about 12 years. And if you live out in the middle of nowhere, I think you can get 20 years. So if you're 60 and you think you can live to 80, you might get 20 years living out in the sticks. And boy, watch out after you turn 80. And by the way, inflation can just take that away. People don't understand $1 million can be a year's income for a McDonald's worker under inflative situations. I watched a Netflix show about GameStop. It's called Dumb Money. I don't know if you've seen this thing, Dumb Money. And there's this thing about Roaring Kitty, the guy that was high on the GameStop stock, and he studied it. And there's a whole lot that goes on. It's about the small guy linking arms and taking down hedge funds that had a big short on GameStop stock. And these movies, the reason I'm bringing it up, these movies never go to the heart of the matter of what's actually happening, which is in that movie, which is kind of a cool movie. You get the small guys linking arms and taking down these fat cats that are trying to take down a stock and enrich themselves. It's a great story, but this is late. This is 2020 and going into early 2021 when all of this money from the small guy just poured into GameStop. And the one thing they don't say, Joe, is where did all these small guys have $1,000 here and $2,000 there? Where did all that come from? That was the inflation. You won't see the GameStop type of linking of arms thing unless the Fed starts giving out tons of money again, because that's where it came from. That whole heroic Roaring Kitty, the guy wearing the red headband and getting people to buy into GameStop to make it really valuable. You have these guys making tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars off just a small amount. That's really cool. I love a good story, but where did all these small guys get that money? They don't even touch it, Joe, which is inflation is what made that happen. And what is it they call it? The chickens are coming home to roost on this stuff, Joe. Because ever since Roaring Kitty and GameStop, that was 2021. Look at the inflation that came after it. Look at the inflation that came after it. It's a sad thing that they don't in the movies talk about the central bank. They always avoid the central bank's root cause of why there was hedge funds that you don't like and that you hate. Why the small guy has to fight against the system and can't buy into a legit company and make money. It's because it's a rigged monetary system, Joe. I just wish they would they'd show the real cause of this stuff, Joe. They just don't.
Yeah, and think about this. Amazon now in the Dow 30. Walgreens, they're out now, right? You got that's right. That's kind of how you do it, right? Think about Walgreens is like on every corner in America. Nope, you can't be in the Dow because you don't perform good. Let's get Amazon in there because we don't like it when the S&P does better. Let's kick out stocks that aren't doing good, and we'll put in more of the Magnificent Seven into the Dow. Stuff like that. Those are little things that most people don't realize happen.
I guess it's time to short Walgreens now, right? Let's get together. Short Walgreens.
Right,
That's what the hedge funds will do.
yeah, right.
Yes.
Before, the people that knew they're going to get booted out, right? That's by the time you found out about it, it was already too late. The money, they already knew about it. Yeah, so Amazon now officially a member of the Dow 30 as Walgreens. Now, well, let's face it, you don't get good enough returns and your stock doesn't do well enough. You're out of here being replaced by Amazon. My guess is NVIDIA is going to be next, right? So they're not in the Dow 30 yet, but I'm sure sooner or later that will happen as well. So if you don't like who's in it, right, Jason? Hey, we'll just change the names of it and hope nobody notices. And that's exactly what kind of is happening when you think about we're talking as we started the show with GDP growth, right? Is it really growth if we've got to spend $3 and that's our money that's being spent. It's taxpayer money, and of course, I always love everybody used to be so concerned about the kids and the grand. We can't do this to the kids and the grand. Remember that when the debt was like $5 trillion? Right now it's almost $35 trillion. Screw it. Heck with the kids and the grandkids. Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. We'll do that. 800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Wednesday. Today's special $20 Liberties, $21.95. Right now we got gold. Depending on where you're up, down. I'm going to just say it's unchanged here. $2,043. So $20 gold. $21.95 if you buy 20 or more. $21.85 at 800-951-0592. And crude oil right around $79 a barrel, but get ready for even higher prices. I know here in Arizona now diesel $4 a gallon, but we've got some interesting things. We've got the hedge funds, the paper guys. We see this a lot in silver. Matter of fact, we're seeing it in silver today, right? Silver, down below $22.50. It's just an outright screaming buy. Why? Because the paper guys keep shorting it. This is happening in the oil markets right now. We're thinking, gosh, $78, $79. That's still pretty, still a lot for crude. The problem is the actual cash market is much more expensive than that. And we've got this weird thing where we've got crude oil builds here in the U.S., like 4 to 8 million barrels a week. I mean, that's like, hey, we're pumping, an extra 500,000 to 1 million barrels of crude a week. But I think a lot of that has to go, what's going on in the Middle East there, a lot of these tankers, right, they're taking longer. They're not going the shortest way. So they're taking longer to get to and from, and it's creating an interesting environment where it looks like we have some crude builds, like that crude should be falling. But when we talk about what we call the cash market, supplies are very, very tight. And, Jason, this is causing prices for gasoline, diesel. We know diesel problems because, well, they're just not making enough diesel fuel right now. But, Jason, this oil market, on the paper side, feels like gas, and I'll just use Arizona because I'm going to use Arizona as the example. Feels like gas should be like $3. But gas here, it's like $3.50 to $3.80, diesel above $4, and it's because the actual physical markets are saying we don't care what the paper markets say. we have an inventory problem. There's not enough crude getting to the right places in a timely fashion, and it really creates a lot of interesting things. And this is what you have in physical markets. Hey, if the paper markets want to tell you one story that it doesn't work for the physical markets, it doesn't matter. The physical market eventually always wins, and that right now that's happening in crude oil right now.
Yeah, the paper markets are for people that don't want to, who wants to store oil. So you buy, the paper asset. And then same thing with gold. A lot of people don't want to store gold, but just like anything with paper assets, it gets oversold. Oh, there's only a certain percentage covered here in the paper, and at some point when markets start to show some weakness, then suddenly everyone's running to physical, or they just sell off the paper. I'm going to put in something else, and suddenly the physical just gets more and more valuable because when you're holding it, you own it, and that's the way we do it, Joe. Just physical metals is so important, and you're right about oil. Keep your eye on oil, right?
Yeah, keep your eye on it. It's going to be, again, this is something where looking into next year, we're going to have, I think, another problem with oil. We're producing record amount, 13.3 million barrels a day. A lot of that, I'll be honest with you, started with the Trump policies. And it just, it takes a little time between when you change policy and the production gets up to speed and you get the pipelines put in and you get it all working right. But that's been frozen out, right? The policies from the Biden administration, this looks like, I'll say this, for the probably peak oil for right now until there's a policy change in the United States, and even with the world, like, Japan's in recession, the UK's in recession, Germany's in recession. Oil demand is going to hit new all-time record highs, and it's already starting to show in the physical markets are saying, we don't care what the paper market says. There's nobody out there that's going to sell crude oil at $78 a barrel unless it's if you don't have a contract for it, if you didn't buy the contract for it, you're just buying on the open market. They're not selling it for $78, Jason, right? They're saying, hey, we want 83, we want 84, we want 85. And the problem is when the paper markets get to 83, 84, 85, or the physical markets, are they going to want 90, 95? And that's really, I think, what is going to be very hard for inflation to really, this mythical thing, man, they tried to act like they could fix it, this soft landing, and oh my gosh, we can cut rates, we've slayed inflation. I don't think they've come anywhere close to slaying inflation, and I think the markets, and I think for a lot of people, they're in for a very rude surprise, and unfortunately, this is what I think. I think quantitative tightening is going to end. I think the Fed is going to cut rates because they have to. And I think inflation, Jason, could come roaring back in 2025. Without a doubt in my mind, it could come roaring back.
Yeah. I see it coming back this year, actually. And then in the years to come, it just gets worse and worse. We'll just see what happens. I did play
but study the history of the 70s, right, Jason? That happened in the 70s. Right. People think, oh my gosh, inflation in the 70s, it was just this straight skyrocket ship higher. It wasn't. We had multiple periods where a weak central banker Arthur Burns, a weak President Jimmy Carter, they were cutting rates only for inflation to come back even stronger.
That's correct. And I played a clip yesterday, Joe, showing that the money supply, even though the government's been tapering, they've been trying to cut, and the Fed's selling their balance sheet. That the money supply has gone up here recently. Oh. That cannot be good for the inflation. So it's looking like right now. I mean, there's a lot of indicators of really bad stuff getting ready to play out, and we're just starting to move into March, starting Friday, right?
Yeah, I think March. We've been talking about March for a while now. I got a suggestion for you. Get your gold put away before March gets here. $20 Liberties, 1 through 19, $21.95. 20 or more, $21.85 at 800-951-0592. Jason and I will be back right after the break. That again. 800-951-0592. I don't have Jason there. Jason's probably taking care of a customer. And you know what? I've been sick. I got to get retrained. Turning the mic on definitely helps. We got gold over 2004, 2042. We're in now the April gold contract. And $20 gold pieces. Less than $150 over spot. That's nothing. It's nothing. $2,195, buy 20 or more. $2,185 at 800-951-0592. And again, more confirmation that the central banks of the world kind of have figured it out when it comes to what's been going on. And obviously the dollar gets talked about the most, right? Because it's, as we like to, the world's reserve currency, at least for right now anyway. The amount of debt to achieve the illusion of prosperity has gotten to the point where, let's just call it what it is. Everybody out there is saying, you know what? Instead of dollars right now, I think I'll take gold. Thank you very much. And it makes a lot of sense. We've seen this play out in the 60s when we shut the gold window, right? It was the same thing. And it's funny how the situation's different, right? It's always a little different. But don't we kind of have that same similarities, right? We had chaos in elections. Right, think about it. The 70s, we had Nixon, right? They closed the gold window. Watergate. Ford has to step in, and then we get the Peanut Man, Jimmy Carter. We have a very weak central bank led by Arthur Burns. You fast forward today, right? Think about the chaos we have right now. Joe Biden, Michigan. 100,000 people in Michigan voted for non-committing, right? It was the second leading vote getter behind Biden. And then, of course, you got Trump, and somehow Nikki Haley's still running for nobody knows why, but, Jason's got a pretty good idea. Hey, if she stays in, that they can still give her the nomination at the convention. But, Jason, we have political chaos. We have a central bank, right? Think about every time Jay Powell speaks, what does he say? Oh, well, we're going to look at the data. We're going to look at the data. We're going to look at the data. We're going to look. What are you going to do? Oh, we're going to look at the data, right? That's all they do, right? They're not forward thinking at all. Usually you want your central bankers to be proactive. Instead, we've got a central bank, Jason, that is completely just reactive. We're going to wait for what the data says, and of course, by the time they get accurate data to come in, it's already too late, Jason.
Yeah, it's they continue on when we report the numbers, Joe, as having lagging data. Here we are in 2024, in the age of digital everything. Up to the millisecond information on almost everything else. But when it comes to economic indicators, there's got all this lagging data. And so that way, when you make a decision, it's always the guy that jumps on the bandwagon last that gets kicked off first. By the time you jump on the party's already gone somewhere else. And it's tough. It's tough to make decisions based off the data that comes out, Joe, because and it also gives the Fed all kinds of cover. Well, but the data 3 months ago told us this, and that's why we had to make the decisions. But now the data's saying this, so we're going to move this way. And then 3 months later, well, we weren't wrong based on the data. We were correct. It gives them such a way of being corrupt constantly and saying, you can't blame us. We did what the data told us to do. And that's what you would have done if you were in my position, right, Joe? It's crooked.
It really is, and it's a great way to kind of explain it, right? As it wasn't our fault, right? Because the data said, right? It was the data's fault, right? And of course, who's the one that determines what the data is going to be? They do. That's what they do, right? And think about this: we're going to get inflation data. I think it's tomorrow. And I forget which one. I want to say it's the deflator inflation data, right? It's already a made-up number, and they're waiting on this where it's going to be so important what this fake number says, and that's the amazing part. With the ability to get the media and the stock market, right? They know we get to control the narrative, and now we've got everybody out there that because everyone's got a 401k. Well, not everybody, but the people that do, you look at CNBC and Fox and see what your stocks are doing, and the stocks guys, they pretend that this fake data that is just made up. Someone sat in some cubicle somewhere and decided, hey, we'll use this mathematical formula and we'll come up with a fake number, but you guys tell everybody how important it is, and then when it's wrong down the road, we can fall back on, but that's what the data's told us to do. If they actually used real numbers, Jason, the data wouldn't be telling them at all. I mean, every American that goes to the supermarket today knows how bad inflation is, right? I mean, you see it every single week, every single day, and wait, I can't wait for this number. Of course, I got a bad feeling even the fake number is going to be too high. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment. 800-951-0592, Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment. You want another reason? It's just incredible to me, the idiocracy of the people that we have in charge. Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary, now making comments that I'll just say this. This will be the stupidest thing she's ever done, and she's done a lot of stupid things. She's calling for the United States and its allies to hand $300 billion in frozen Russian central bank funds to Ukraine. It is necessary and urgent for our coalition to find a way to unlock the value of these immobilized assets to support Ukraine, she said in Brazil at a G20 meeting. I'm going to tell you right now, the fact of the matter is a big reason why you have all of these countries like the BRICS nations trying to do business outside of dollars is this nonsense here. How many countries have we invaded? No one's frozen our assets. Right, but that's what we like to do. While you doing something, we're going to. Now Russia, they only had $300 billion. I guess that's not a lot. It's a huge amount of money. $67 billion of it by our Federal Reserve. The rest of it's in Europe. But Jason, this is idiotically stupid. It's one thing to freeze them, which already makes everybody nervous. If you're now going to steal, because this is what it would be, stealing another country's assets to fund a war against them, this will be it for the dollar. This will be, I promise you, this will be the end of the dollar. It won't happen overnight, but every country in the world outside of maybe 7, right, those old European guys will immediately find ways to start doing less business in dollars, because you never know when all of a sudden it turns on you, right? And you're the next country that they decide to steal from.
Yeah, and if a lot of, there's one place you can spend dollars, and it's America, and when there's less and less places for you to spend those dollars, it becomes a little bit of a panic as to how do you get rid of all this American Treasury debt, right? And when it all starts coming back home, they talk about your inflation. Talk about, for someone to buy that debt, to move it out of dollars, what's the price going to go to? How high does it have to go so that somebody will actually partake? And that's the kind of thing that's going to make the inflation even worse and worse than it already is. This is an international way of causing inflation, not just printing it here in America.
It'd be incredible. She is so out of touch, saying it's extremely unlikely that stealing, because that's what it is, stealing Russia's funds would hurt the dollar. Realistically, there are no alternatives to the dollar, the euro, and the yen. Okay, maybe you just haven't been paying attention. I don't know. Maybe she lives under a rock. Have you seen how many countries now accept the renminbi to do trades with China? Yeah, it's not loans yet, but the dollar's use in the world has nothing but declined during Janet Yellen's reign as the Fed governor, the Fed undersecretary, the Fed chief, now the Treasury secretary. This is exactly what leads to economic ruin. Patriot Radio News Hour. Jason and I, we're going to be back with the half-empty cup. Stay with us.